Hello and welcome back. This is chapter 3 of Ancient History, the story I've decided to serialize and put on my YouTube channel. If you don't know who I am and you've come across this video randomly somewhere on YouTube, my name is L C Conn and I write under the pen name of L C Conn. Ancient history is not the genre I'm known for. I normally write fantasy with stories such as Realm of Dragons, Fight for the Crown, and my 7-book series, the One True Child series, which are fantasy. I've write these other random stories, as I said, randomly, this is my way of getting one of them out there. So, if you haven't listened to chapter 1 and chapter 2, you will find them in my playlist, which somewhere around I will put cards up with the link to chapter 1 and chapter 2. But right now I'm about to read chapter 3, and we pick up with Ashley's story. Here we go. The issue with going out on Friday for the agreed upon date seemed to resolve itself after a hard week of settling into a new job. Ashley received a call from Robbie late in the afternoon, wanting to know if she would like to celebrate her first week at work with Kelly and himself. The idea of going to the pub as a group rather than one-on-one seemed a much better idea than facing the prospect of disappointing Tom. Ashley raced home to shower and change before heading out with her brother and sister-in-law. It was also her conscious decision to drive. Her reasoning to herself was that if she was a sober driver, then alcohol would not be a factor in any possibly stupid decisions she might make that night. She wanted to have a clear head. She parked the car in the nearly full car park and walked to the pub. Already the music seemed to be at full volume as it blasted its way through the doors, and Ashley hung back, allowing Robbie and Kelly to enter first. Tom was not hard to spot, being so tall, and he had found them a table already. Ashley saw his brief moment of surprise at the couple being with her, but it soon changed to smiles as he acted as if he had expected to see them. "Drinks? What do you want?" Tom asked over the top of the music. "Beer for me," Robbie called back. "A white wine," Kelly requested. "Just a lemonade for me. I'm driving," Ashley told him. There was a look that fleetingly crossed his face she could not decipher, and she chose to ignore it. "Back in a tick then," he told them. The evening was a lovely one as they chatted over the meal that arrived. They drank and laughed the night away, and Ashley was amazed at how much her brother and his wife were drinking. Tom was not. The band began to play, and soon it was too noisy for talking. Robbie stood and grabbed Kelly's hand, dragging her onto the floor for a dance along with half of the pub. Ashley sat back and watched them, while Tom moved around the table to take Kelly's seat beside her. "Did I scare you last week?" He leaned in so she could hear what he was saying. "No. Why?" "Robbie and Kelly?" "Robbie wanted to celebrate my first week working. I thought you wouldn't mind," Ashley told him. "I do a bit. You still owe me a date. This one doesn't count." "You had me all to yourself last week," she reminded him. "So I did scare you. I'm sorry." Not scared, more unsure of what it is that you want. They remained quiet for some time as the music continued. Ashley had watched the crowd as they danced away in a heaving mass. After a few songs, Robbie and Kelly returned to the table, laughing and sweaty. They sat, and Kelly's eyebrows shot up at the new seating arrangement, but she didn't say a word. To Ashley, this small little act grated on her nerves. Without even thinking, she grabbed Tom's hand and pulled him with her into the dance floor. A fleeting glimpse through the crowd showed her that Robbie was not happy, and Kelly was holding onto his arm. Ashley didn't care. The music suddenly stopped at the end of the song, and the band began to play again, this time a slow number. Ashley went to move off the floor, but Tom placed his arms around her, and they moved to the music. She became aware of his body pressed against hers, and she tried to pull away, but he held her in place. The crowd had thinned a little, and when she looked at the table, she saw Robbie staring. making sure his best friend didn't make a move on his sister. Ashley wondered when she would ever be free of his overprotectiveness. When she looked up into her dance partner's face, she found Tom staring down at her. There was a small smile that played on his lips, revealing dimples in his cheeks and crinkling lines around his blue eyes. She looked away and felt her cheeks redden under his gaze, then felt him give a chuckle. The music stopped, and when it restarted again, it was thankfully faster. She pulled away this time, and he released her. As she headed back to the table, she picked up her glass and gulped it down and waited for the words from her brother to either of them, but they didn't come. Ashley looked at Robbie and could see them just bursting to come out, and realized that he would wait until Tom was not with them. When the night came to an end and the band finished, the four of them left the pub and started to walk to her car. Robbie and Kelly were leading the way, and Tom walked beside Ashley. "How did you get here?" she asked him. "I walked. It's not that far from home." "Would you like a lift?" Ashley heard herself ask. "That would be nice, thanks." Reaching the car, she unlocked it, and they settled themselves in, Robbie and Kelly in the back and Tom in the front passenger seat. Ashley started the car and headed out. She bypassed the turning to Tom Street and instead headed straight for home, where she stopped out the front and waited for her brother and his wife to get out. "I won't be long, I'll just run Tom home," she told her brother when he asked what she was doing. There were mutterings under his breath as Robbie got out of the car, and she refused to look at Kelly. As soon as the door closed, she took off again and headed for Tom's place. Pulling up the drive a few minutes later, she sat with the engine still running. "Do you want to come in for a drink?" he asked. "Just a drink?" Ashley asked him. "I promise I won't ask for a kiss again," he grinned at her. "Good. In that case, I would love a cup of tea." She turned the key in the ignition and got out of her car. "Robbie's going to be waiting for you to get home. You sure you want to come in?" "I am a single woman who is old enough to know what she is doing," Ashley told him as he opened the door and switched the lights on. Following him inside, Tom headed to the kitchen and switched the jug on. She leaned against the bench and watched him work. "I told you could still dance," he said without looking at her. There was a grin that was trying very hard to escape him. "I wasn't expecting a slow one," she said truthfully. "I'm pleased it was. You said you wouldn't try anything. I'm not. I enjoyed the dance, that's all." The jug finished boiling and he poured the water over the tea bag in her mug and the coffee granules in his. When he finished with the milk and fished the bag out of the cup and handed it to her. "I enjoyed tonight, even though we had unexpected company," he told her, taking a sip of his own. "If they weren't there tonight, would you have tried something?" she asked him. "I don't know." Tom slowly placed his mug back on the bench and then took hers from her hands. Without a word, he leaned down and kissed her. "I thought you weren't—" "I said I wouldn't ask." He placed the cup down and gathered Ashley to him. "I told you, I'm normally spontaneous." His lips touched hers again, this time questing and testing. Ashley found herself responding and reached around to hold him in place. She felt the rush of his attraction to her, felt his hands as they moved from her back up to her face. He pulled away a moment, only to come back and kiss her again, more fervently and hungrily. All thoughts and doubts went out the window for Ashley at that point. Tom picked her up and she held on around his neck as he moved her from the kitchen. Out to the lounge and the couch, he placed her down and joined her, his hand moving down her body as she started to pull on the shirt he was wearing. All too soon they were laying in each other's arms, naked. She was enjoying the feeling of being with another man. He caressed her with his hands and mouth, sending shivers through her body. She encouraged and moaned deeply when he entered her and felt the first thrusts. Ashley gripped him with her arms and legs, pulling him closer and wanting the release. She felt it building between them, could feel him getting closer and closer, and let herself go. It was the moment he had been waiting for, and he gave a deep grunt as he came. Tom lay on her, breathing deeply and fast. Ashley reached up and kissed his cheek and nibbled on his neck. Her nails ran up and down his back as he caught his breath and pushed himself to an elbow. He kissed her slowly as he shifted his body weight off her. Gathering her up in his arms, he held her and caressed her lightly, causing goosebumps to erupt on her skin. "I never thought that was going to happen," he whispered into her ear, "especially tonight." "Why?" Because I'm sober and I brought my brother and his wife on our date? Well, there was that. But I'd stopped dreaming of it, he whispered as he stared into her eyes. I wanted to be sober, so if you tried something then I could make a decision, fully aware of what was going on, she told him, stopping the hand that roamed her body. When did you decide this was going to happen then? In the kitchen. But this doesn't mean we're in a relationship, Tommy. It was sex and nothing more. It was good sex. He kissed her again. It was. Very good. But I can't stay. Not even a little bit longer? Tom asked, holding on tighter. I can. But Robbie will be banging on the door looking for me, Ashley told him. I'm not afraid of him anymore. Tom released her from the couch and watched as she began to dress. When can I see you again? As she stopped, she was putting her bra back on. He stood up and cupped her face with his large hands. I mean it, Tommy. It was just sex. I'm not looking for a relationship. I'm not ready for all that comes with it. Okay, just sex. When can we have just sex again? He grinned down at her. I don't know. She took his hands from her face and held them for a moment. Don't fall for me, Tommy. What if it's too late? He asked. Then I'll have to stop seeing you. I'm not ready to let go of my anger and pain and accept love again. I can accept that. And I'm not going to push for more. I do know what you're going through, Ash. I've got 2 years more experience on the other side than you do. You'll get there, he told her gently. He leaned down and kissed her again. Her hands were on his chest and could feel his heart beating underneath. It was going as fast as hers. Thank you for understanding, Tommy. Now I had better go. She pushed herself away from him and searched for her shirt. As she put it on, he pulled on his jeans and was just buttoning them up when the phone rang. That will be your brother. He winked at her and went to answer. Ashley sat on the couch to pull her shoes on as he answered, his voice a murmur from the kitchen. She got up and walked through the door and saw him hanging up. So was it? Ashley asked. Yes. I said you were finishing off a cup of tea and that you were about to head home. He turned around and she took in his body for the first time. Age had not given him the spread that so many other men their age seemed to get. He was still lean and muscular. I better go, she said slowly, feeling the need to wrap her arms around him again. She grabbed her bag from where she'd left it on the bench and headed to the front door. Tom followed her out and stood with her by the door of her car. I had fun tonight, he told her, fumbling with the words as he searched for something to say. So did I. Call me during the week. Maybe come to dinner, she told him, and reached up, kissing him one last time. I'll take you up on that. He kissed her back. Tom shut the door after she had got behind the wheel and stood in the driveway as she backed the car out, his half-naked body lit up by her headlights. She drove the short distance to the little flat out the back of her brother's house and parked up. Ashley didn't let herself think of what had just happened yet. She wanted to do that once she was in the safety of her own bed. The keys were in her hands and she was just inserting it when the back door to the main house opened behind her. Opening her own door, she stepped inside, flicked the lights on and waited for Robbie to enter. You took your time, he said, facing her. We had a cup of tea and talked. Didn't you talk enough in the pub? It was too loud. Go home, Robbie, you're drunk. Are you and he? No, I am not going to answer that, Robbie. You have had your time to interfere. I'm in my 40s. I've been married and I'm in the middle of a divorce. I can talk to who I like. I can have coffee with who I like. And shockingly enough, I can even sleep with whoever I like. Stay out of my personal life and everything between us will be fine. That includes Kelly, as she told him, trying to remain calm. I just don't want you to get hurt again, he said quietly. I know you don't, but you need to trust that I can make my own decisions and sort out my own mistakes. I really appreciate that you still feel the need to look out for me like you did when we were younger, but I'm growing up now. Okay, I get the message, he said with his hands up. Good. Now, not that I don't appreciate all you've done for me, but I will be starting to look for my own place tomorrow. Don't rush off. Get some decent money behind you first. Are you going to let me live my life? Because I did not come back to New Zealand to be limited again. You can live your life. I'm sorry that I jumped to conclusions, and I'll tell Kelly to back off. It's just what? She asked over the top of him. When I saw you two dancing, it looked like you both had hooked up already. No, we have not. I will admit that it was very nice to be dancing with a man, and we had a very nice chat tonight after I dropped him off. He and I have something in common, remember? We both have cheating exes. I find it helps to talk to someone who knows what I'm going through. Robbie put his hands on it in surrender again. Okay, we will back off and stop meddling. But don't forget that we're here for you as well, Ash. How can I forget my only brother? She pulled him into a hug. I couldn't have got through the last 6 months without you. Right then. Good night, he said, a little embarrassed as he let her go and headed to the door. And I mean it. Don't go rushing to find a place. We had this place built for you, and I thank you for it. Good night, Robbie. Night, Ash. He walked to the house, and she watched to make sure he got there without stumbling. Shutting the door on the world, she headed to the bedroom and threw herself onto the bed. Tommy. He was forefront in her mind. The way he had touched her, kissed and made love to her. The way he had taken charge and she had found herself following. Having been so used to the way Andrew had performed, she found that she definitely preferred Tom. Sitting up as she didn't know what to do with herself. She had liked the activity of the evening, but she didn't want to think of him in that way. He was a friend. Gone were the thoughts of him as a brother. Those were well and truly smashed. Some adjusting was in order. Ashley stood and headed to the bathroom. She got under the shower and tried to wash away the thoughts that were invading her mind as she remembered what he looked like. Her hands traced over her still firm breasts and flat stomach. Once such an action would have brought tears to her eyes as she thought of what might have been. But now her thoughts were so different as she remembered his touch. Turning the water off, she dried herself and pulled on a nightshirt. Going through to the kitchen, she put the jug on to boil and made herself a tea. A smile came as she remembered the full cup she'd left on the bench at Tom's, forgotten and left to go cold while things had heated up in the lounge. She took the cup to bed with her and pulled out the book she'd been reading, hoping to distract herself from more of the thoughts that were starting to plague her mind. For the next couple of weeks, Ashley threw herself into work as she found her feet in the new office and how they did things. Robbie had kept to his promise and not mentioned anything. Kelly, however, still kept her eye on both Ashley and Tom. A couple of times he'd come over for dinner and they'd enjoyed each other's company, but there had not been a repeat of that first time. Whenever he was with Ashley, Kelly had always found an excuse to interrupt them. The first time Tom came for dinner, Ashley had expected it and even looked for her. The second time they were watching a movie, and the reason was tenuous, to say the least. The third time was just as Ashley was placing a meal on the table. Tom had asked who the extra place setting was for when the knock came at the door. She put the plates down on the table and went to answer it, opening it wide to let her sister-in-law in. "Hi, Ash. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize Tom was here," Kelly said quickly. "Yes, you did," Ashley replied as she closed the door behind her. "Hello, Kelly," Tom greeted her from the table. "Another dinner?" Kelly asked. "Yes, we have to eat at some point. I mean, all the sex we're having." "Ash, stop teasing her," Tom told her off. "What can I help you with this time, Kelly?" Ashley asked, sitting down at the table. "Would you like to join us?" "No, we've already eaten. I wanted to know if you're going to be around this weekend. We thought we would have a barbecue. Eric has the night off, and I've managed to convince Caitlin that she doesn't need to go out. You should come too, Tom. You and your kids," Kelly said. "I'll be around. I've got nothing on," Ashley told her. "I'm not sure what the kids are doing, but I can let you know," Tom asked. "Yes, of course. Well, I'll leave you to your dinner. It smells good. Don't forget to ring me," she told him, and they left that little house. "I swear she has a crush on you." Ashley shook her head. "No, she's just been nice. She really helped me when all the shit went down." He began to eat and put his fork down. "Do you want to meet my kids?" "Eventually. If they come to the barbecue, I'll meet them. Tommy, I know we aren't in a relationship." "I understand." He picked up his fork with a grin. "What are you doing Friday?" Nothing. Why? He asked. How about dinner at my place? I think it might be my turn to cook for you. He looked up at her quickly and she caught the meaning. At least yours we won't be interrupted so much, although she has already been. Are you and Kelly not getting on? He asked her as he finished his plate. We get along. She's concerned about you. I'll have a word with her then. I would like to think I can come here without making you both, you and me, uncomfortable, he said with a frown. If you do, she'll think it's coming from me. As she placed her fork down on her plate and picked up her wine glass. I'll be gentle. He leaned back in the chair and smiled. Ashley began to feel stirrings under the weight of his gaze and smile. She placed the glass back down and stood suddenly, starting to clear the table for something to do. The nervousness she was experiencing was unexpected, and she did not like it. Tom was soon there at her side as she began to clean up and do the dishes. While she wiped the bench when they were done, Tom moved into the lounge and music started soon after. Ashley finished up and headed in to see him going through her CDs. The rest are all still in Oz. I only brought back the ones I really love, she told him over the music as she sat down on the couch. Did you leave a lot of stuff over there? He asked her. Only things I didn't want or need, which I found to be quite a lot. That collection are ones that mean more about what happened before my marriage rather than after. Tom put the CD down he was looking at, came over and held out his hand. Feel like dancing? He asked with his eyes twinkling. Why not? Ashley placed her hand in his and he pulled her up into his arms. His hands started to move down her back, trailing his fingers and making her shiver and smile. Their bodies moved together with the music, her hands resting on his hips. She looked down for a moment, feeling herself go red under his attention, and he lifted her face back up to meet his mouth. Ashley was falling into the kiss. Her hands moved up and went around his neck as he pulled her closer. She broke the kiss and reached around for his hand and started to move towards the bedroom. They'd only just reached the doorway when another knock came at the door. Oh, come on. That can't be her again, Tom said quietly as Ashley stopped and headed to the front door. She opened it and found her niece standing there. Caitlin, how can I help you, or rather your mother? Mum? She's got nothing to do with this. Hi, Uncle Tom, Caitlin said, coming in. Kate, he said, leaning against the doorframe with his arms crossed. What can I do for you? Ashley asked again. I was hoping you could give me a lift into Wellington tomorrow. Dad's taking my car to work for a service. Yes, I'll be leaving at 7 in the morning. Was that it? Yep, Mum said you wouldn't mind. Thanks, Auntie Ashley. Good night, Caitlin, Ashley said, still holding on to the door. Just before the door shut on her niece, Caitlin turned back. Sorry, was I interrupting something? She asked. None of your business. Good night. See you in the morning. Ashley closed the door and turned back to Tom. I'm going to go, he said, coming towards her. She reached out and circled his waist with her arms. I think that would be a good idea. I'm looking forward to Friday now. And I will definitely have that talk with Kelly. Sending Kate out here to do her snooping is not on. He bent and kissed her again. I'll call you about Friday, she said, as she let him go and they made their way to the door. I look forward to it. I didn't really believe you when you said Kelly was interfering. I'm sorry that she has. I used to think Robbie was bad, but he's behaved himself after I talked to him. They stopped with her hand on the door handle. Tom placed a hand on her waist and kissed her one last time before she opened it. Don't go storming over and yelling at her, he told her as he hugged her. I won't, as much as I want to. She pulled away and opened the door. Talk soon. He left her standing in the doorway, feeling let down and frustrated. A curtain twitched in a window in the main house and Ashley frowned. She shut the door to the cold of the night and headed to get ready for bed, switching the stereo off along the way. Well, that's the end of chapter 3. Sorry for my stumblings. I'm not a public speaker. This is much easier. If somebody had been sitting here in front of me, it would have been far worse. Okay, that's it for chapter 3. Keep a watch out for chapter 4. I'd love to hear your thoughts if you've watched it this far. Let me know. Thank you.